Welcome to the Beyond the Bucket Show, a podcast centered around optimizing all life's buckets. We all have buckets we are balancing: coaching, entrepreneurial ventures, family, passion projects, and health. Let's all take this journey together and become bucket fillers. And here's your host, Chris McSwain.
Man, I just love that intro beat. And today we got a treat for everybody.
Finally.
My boy, Ryan Cooper. It's been 3 years and you haven't been on the program. So welcome to the Beyond the Bucket show.
I made it.
Good to see you.
I made it. Before you go any further, man, we got to hand out some flowers. It's been 130 plus episodes, I think.
135.
135 to be exact.
Yep.
And I could have been number one.
Could have.
But I was sleeping on it.
Yeah.
Shout out to the NCAA. Couldn't let me do it.
For sure. Well, the time has come.
Time is here. Yeah.
And we're here. So why don't we just kick it off? Give everybody a fun fact about you that even somebody who's known you for 23 years might not even know.
Oh, man. Well, first of all, I hope you know I'm left-handed. Shout out to all the left-handers out there. But
I seen that jumper go down.
Man, fun fact about me. What's it going to be? I think one of the things, if you know me, I think you know I love my peanut M&Ms.
Okay.
Peanut M&Ms, and they got to be frozen.
Frozen.
They got to be frozen. If you haven't tried a snack in the freezer, your favorite snack, especially if it's chocolate or any type of fruit snack, you got to try it.
Fruit snacks in the
you got frozen. And you know what? Jamie Craighead, the old San Jose State head coach, put me onto this. We had in our offices at San Jose State, she always had a stash of the fruit snacks in the freezer. So that was the go-to. And then I had to do it, and the kids love it, and I love it. So fun fact there for snacks.
Fruit snacks in the freezer. Okay.
It's a go-to, man. You got to try it.
And we have a lot of fruit snacks here at the house, and as you do, with 3 kids. We have 5 kids, but we got a starting 5.
Oh, my goodness.
Got a starting 5 of individuals that are all 5 and under right now. So
we do.
But yeah, okay. Well, I'm gonna utilize that. But this is the first actual in McSwain studio. We did one at the Splash Lab in person, but this one is actually in the McSwain home studio.
And the setup is phenomenal. The setup is phenomenal. I mean, this is fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So why don't we give everybody like a 3-minute rundown about who you are, how you got to this seat right here, right now.
Well, gosh, I think it starts and ends with basketball. I mean, let's take it all the way back to Del Mar High School and our relationship, Chris. And, what was that, 2001? I come in as a twig of a freshman. I think I know how to play basketball, was just learning, obviously. But, that's where our relationship really started. And then from there, I spent a year at Del Mar, ended up transferring to Piedmont Hills High School and played on some pretty good teams there at Piedmont Hills for 3 years and graduated.
By the way, what was your record in those 3 years?
Oh my gosh, you're going to test me here. I think it was 53-5, 53-5. So couldn't win the big one though. Couldn't win the big, couldn't get past the bells. That seemed to be the Achilles heel there. Junior and senior.
0-3 in championships against them?
0-2. Well, and what's the frustrating part about this is, I know we'll get into this a little bit more, but before the WCAL had really become the WCAL, right, of what it is now, and just such a powerhouse when it comes to public-private, right, we were still in the mix. There was a lot of public schools that were very competitive at that time. You had the Oak Groves of the world and so on. And so Piedmont Hills, we had a great run in the Mount Hamilton League for a couple of years there. And the frustrating part was even, in 2003, where we were 27-0. That year, we found ourselves beating Valley Christian and beating Bellarmine in the month of December at home. Right. And so, you have that film to go off of. And then in the championship game, you drop it. Right. And so that was the second time we got to see the Bells. And then going into senior year, same thing. They closed out our season at the Event Center at San Jose State in the finals. So, but after my time at Piedmont Hills, I spent a year at Ohlone and played for 1 year for John Peterson. And John Peterson's built a phenomenal program at Ohlone during his time there, and then spent some time with Mike Dunlap at LMU. From there, NDNU, Notre Dame, NCAA Division II there in the Pac West, and played there for 3 years. And so graduating in 2008, it was a no-brainer for me. It was, you got to get into basketball in some realm. And that for me was going to be coaching at the next level. And, I think the Division I level is interesting, and when you talk about that as a player, we all strive to get to the highest level as a player. And that's what we're really trying to do. And when you realize, okay, I can attain my basketball talents or whatever sport you're in, maybe it's Division II, maybe it's Division III, NAIA, there's a lot of great programs out there. But for me, it was time to turn my attention to coaching and give back to the game. So I got fortunate that the year I graduated, there was an opportunity at Del Mar to go back and take over the varsity program.
Right.
And I don't know to this day if I would have given myself the keys to that ship. So Eric Ostrowski, if you're out there listening, man, currently the athletic director at Willow Glen, gave me an opportunity as he stepped away from coaching. And so at, what was I, 22?
Yep.
22 years old to take over a varsity program. And by the way, not knowing a thing on how to lead a program, but trial through fire at that point, spent 5 years there and had some success. Moved to Oak Grove, and Rich Young and Eddie Buller at the time had taken a risk on me, so to speak, still a young varsity coach, coming into the A-League, and we competed.
You went to Valley first, didn't?
Oak Grove first. Yep. And so after 5 years at Del Mar, had a 1 year run at Oak Grove. We won the BVAL. That was pretty fun, beating Piedmont Hills, the alma mater there, in the BVAL tournament and at Independence. That was a great game. And then got an opportunity to join Valley Christian and lead that program for 2 years in the WCL. And so I think in terms of basketball, we talked about our relationship.
Ironically, your first and only league win that year was Bellarmine Bells.
It was.
And you had lost to them as a player, and now you kind of get some retribution.
Well, thanks for giving me that shout out, because that was the only win we had in 2 years in the league, so we weren't great. So spent 2 years there, and a phenomenal experience for me. I think you want to get tested as a coach, right? As a player, you want to play with good players. You want to play against the best players. You put in the work, and you want to get tested, and you want to see where you're at. I think there's always a check-in as an athlete, right? And as coaches, as you know, you want to go against the best, right? You prepare, and you put yourself out there, and you get exposed, and you go back to the drawing board and you get better, right? And it's all for your kids, to try and make sure that you're putting them in the best position to be successful as players. So what better, platform to do that than the WCAL? And so, coming out of Oak Grove, so 6 years out of public school, I got thrown right in. And gosh, I mean, going against the historic coaches that are of the WCAL on the men's side and the women's side. But at that time, 2014 on the men's side, it was just absolutely stacked, as it is today. So I got tested as a coach, and it made me better in those 2 years, no doubt about it. But as we know, everything's about relationships, right? And so I got an opportunity during my time at Valley Christian be introduced to Coach Dave Wojcik, and that really changed my life.
And Dave Wojcik, for those that don't know, was the head men's basketball coach at Valley Christian. Coop was coaching a 7th, 8th grade top flight AAU team, and Dave brings his son down for the tryouts, and Coop actually started to coach him. And so I'll let you take it from there. Yeah.
So Dave, man, what a knowledgeable guy. I mean, he spent over 30 years in the game, and he was coming from Boise State, and he was the associate head coach with Leon Rice. And so when he got the job at San Jose State, his son, Jake Wojcik, was looking for a program at the time at 7th grade. And so, he tested a few other AAU programs, and he found himself at Top Flight, which we couldn't be more thrilled about. Obviously, had a great career at Bellarmine and with Top Flight. And gosh, I tried to get him at Valley. Yeah. I tried to get him at Valley. So Heather wasn't having that. But so when I had the introduction and I got a chance to coach Jake, a year later, Dave had said, "Hey, Coop, what's your thoughts about trying to take the next step as a coach?" And that was the goal. I was always trying to coach at the highest level and test my skills and see what it was, right? Because I don't think a lot of people understand what that level brings, as a coach or a player, and everything that comes with it. And so there was an opportunity to join his staff in 2016 as the director of basketball operations. And there was no thought there. You could jump right in, and so spent a year there with him and at San Jose State in 2016. Unfortunately, his father passed that season. And so it was in the best interest of the Wojcik family to move on. And he needed to be with his family back in Wheeling, West Virginia, where he's from. And so it was a 1-year opportunity for me, although he spent 4 there as the head coach. He stepped away and I survived a coaching change, which is really difficult to do at that level. Coach Jean Prelot from Colorado and Tad Boyle, he was the associate head coach there. For 7 years, got the head job at San Jose State, and I survived there. And he kept me on staff for 2 years. And that really was an impactful time for me because I got to get on the road. So I went from the director of basketball operations, really the insight on, gosh, how do you run a program effectively, right? What does a budget look like at that level? There's a lot of things that go into road trips and team
So as
travel.
you continue to tell the story, why don't you outline some of those things that you would be doing? It was hotels, it was meal preps, it was getting the vehicles ready for the team. It was getting all the gear. Talk about all that behind the scenes stuff that people might not really understand, because everybody wants to get to the Division I level or the college level, but they don't really understand once they get there what their actual job description would be, even at a director of basketball position.
Well, let me tell you this. I quickly learned that there's 2 very important people in a Division I program. It's your ops and your head coach. I mean, you are going to be hand in hand with each other, and the program is going to go in the direction as you go, so to speak. And so to your point, there were many moments where I was introduced to things as a director of basketball operations that I didn't know, right? And so you are responsible for almost everything in the program. I mean, from academics to team travel, and I always say this to people that watch college basketball on TV, the tournament time, that maybe go to a game, that haven't had the opportunity to speak to somebody or know somebody in their inner circle that have coached or played at that level. But for those that are out there listening that played or coached or know somebody that's played Division I basketball, when you watch a game and the ball gets thrown up in the air for a tip-off, there are so many things that went into that moment just to get to that moment for a program.
Right.
And what we see as fans sitting back, enjoying it, maybe we got pizza, we got people over, we're enjoying the NCAA tournament. They have no clue the stress level of the coaches on that bench, and specifically the director of basketball operations, because there are so many things in that very moment that had to go right from a planning perspective. Flights, team bus, that's a charter. Are we on time? What time are we going to get to the arena? Making sure that we have an outline in terms of what it looks like when we do get to the arena for players, pregame warm up, shoot around. What are we wearing that day? Do we have all the gear? Do we have the halftime meal or snack, whatever it is that your head coach might want? Do we have the post-game meal set up? I always look at the end of the bench on these games, and I can always tell who the ops guy is just because he's always pacing around wondering if, hey, Chick-fil-A is going to make it on time by the end of the game, right? For the post-game meal. So there's a lot of things that go into just getting to the tip-off. And so that's something that's unique in terms of watching basketball and then coaching it at that level.
Right. Wow. Well, that's a lot. And then so after your time there, you spent 4 years there?
Yeah. So
the first time around?
Yep. So director of basketball operations for a year, 2 years as an assistant coach. 2 years as an assistant coach under Jean Prelot. And again, that as a recruiting coordinator and assistant coach got me on the road. And then in 2019, I got an opportunity to go back and take over at Notre Dame. And so that was a very special moment for me. I think we all strive as coaches to run our own program at some point and at any level.
Sure.
And when I got a phone call to go back to Notre Dame and spearhead, a transformation, and the president, Judith Gregg at the time, and Josh Duty, the athletic director, said, "Hey, Coop, what do you think about coming back and trying to turn this thing around?" And so, that time at San Jose State as the ops, and then 2 years on the road recruiting and being on the floor and coaching, that really prepared me for an opportunity to run a program in the Pac West at the Division II level. And so left San Jose State, got a chance to go, and so spent the year there at Notre Dame, and it was an awesome experience for me. Running your own, there's nothing like running your own program. Unfortunately, we had COVID set in, right? We got the whole year in, which was great. And uniquely enough, we're at Point Loma, and we're playing a game there, and it was towards the end of the season, and I get a message in the pregame that we're going to have a meeting when we return to campus about the future of athletics. And so this email goes out to our staff, and so we've got to huddle really quick and make sure it doesn't get to our players. There's a Mercury News, there's San Francisco Chronicle article about NDNU, and are they going under? Are they going to shut down athletics due to COVID? Like, it was just a lot going on, and so we had to protect our players in that moment. But unfortunately, the university decided to step away from athletics as COVID hit, and so I only got a chance to run that program for a year. And then I got blessed with the opportunity and very fortunate to go back to San Jose State, this time on the women's side with, as I mentioned before, Coach Jamie Craighead, who had done a phenomenal job there at San Jose State, and joined her staff as the associate head coach. And that was in 2020. And so I spent 2 years there with Jamie. So, all in all, 6 years there in the college game and never had to move. That's unheard of,
Right.
And so very fortunate.
All right. So you get those experiences and opportunities, and that kind of leads you into the next thing, because your staff was asked not to return at San Jose State. And then you had a decision to make. Either you're going to try to keep with this coaching thing. You have a young family, and that has to be in your mind too. And then you got to figure out how to live in this area. So what was the next step for you on that process?
That's a great question. Whenever you enter, if you have a significant other, let me just say this. I hope that they understand the level that you're either at or aspiring to get to as a coach. I'm very fortunate enough to have a spouse in Allie that completely understood what college basketball looks like. The demands around that, specifically around travel and that recruiting piece and being away and the grind of a season, because you're not very present. Yeah. And there is no way that you will be successful in your career path as a coach, especially at the higher levels that you get, without a spouse that is 100% on board and supportive of your career, because you spoke about having little ones, right? And so we have 3 daughters under 6, and it's one of those things where there's no way it could have been done without her support. And so that's number one. You got to have a rock in the family to allow you to do that and really go after your dream. And so Allie is that for our family. But the other piece to that is you're always at the mercy of wins and losses at that level. And unfortunately, coming out of the COVID year, we had a very unique experience for our girls at San Jose State. So I get thrown right into it as the associate head coach, and so they decided as the Mountain West Conference that we were going to go into the bubble. Right, there was a lot of talk around the NBA, and we know what happened there. And I said, Coach, they're not really going to do this, are they? Like, these are college kids. Like, well, they did it. And they executed it brilliantly, and we saw other conferences around the country do it. But so they sent us to Phoenix, and so for 33 days we were at the Arizona resort there in Phoenix, and we literally were playing in a bubble. I mean, we had a practice facility in the ballroom. It was an unbelievable experience. It was like being a pro. I mean, because everything was remote in terms of academics. There was check-ins, and we traveled with an advisor, and but at the end of the day, we were off campus.
Right.
And so very unique, very new, practicing in a ballroom, playing at Grand Canyon University, our games, and being in this bubble. And so
and being away from your family from that time. I know you had your family come out, but still, it's just a lot to handle.
Very much so. And so that experience in itself was very different, right? And now I can actually speak to what those NBA guys go to, because don't forget, even though they make millions and millions of dollars, or they still have family, you know, and there's nothing like being present with your family. So, you know, I felt that very much so firsthand, but, you know, we didn't play very well our second year in terms of wins and losses. And so new athletic director came in to San Jose State as Marie Tuitt was exiting, and he decided to go a different direction. And so this is where that level really gets cutthroat, right? You know, I would say you're constantly kind of looking over your shoulder. You know, am I going to be here? Has my head coach signed an extension? What does that look like? What's the buyout clause look like? You know, as assistants, you're always looking for another job, you know, and if you have a head coach that understands that and has been in the game for long enough, they really try and promote that for you and say, hey, you should always be having conversations. You should be going to the Final Four. You should be applying to jobs all the time, putting yourself out there. And so, you know, we were let go, to your point, in 2022. And so I had a decision to make. You know, 6 years in the collegiate level, and we've never had to move. And my wife and I are from the Bay Area, you know, 30 plus years. So, you know, you take a look at it and you go, well, I got to stay in the game. This is what I love to do. This is a passion of mine. And so I attacked it pretty hard, and we went after a handful of jobs that we didn't get.
And how many interviews or how many applications and interviews did you put in?
So that's a great question, because, you know, over the 3 months that I had, I probably put in 30 apps and got 6 interviews.
Wow. And how many of those did you think you were going to get in those 6 interviews?
So there was a couple schools that flew me out to the final 2 or 3. And one was local, where I was able to just drive and be there in the final rounds. But here's the deal. You never know what the vision is for the university, the athletic department, the president, where they want to turn, what they came from, the next page of the program. So you're always kind of at the mercy of, you know, making phone calls, sending an email. Hey, well, you know, do you have a little insight to this? Do you have a little? So, you know, you don't know what they want to do in the future of the programs of other universities. So that's what I was going through. You know, I found myself in a great position to be in the mix for a few of these jobs. And unfortunately, none of them panned out. And so we got a little late in the process. And I looked at Allie and I said, babe, we got to make a decision here. You know, what are we going to do? Do we just stay in the game? And there was an opportunity in the Midwest at a national junior college. And we kind of looked at it and said, do we do this just to say we're still in basketball? Right. Sure. And I just didn't think at the time it was right for the kids and to uproot our family. And again, that is something that you have to be prepared for. If you're chasing this level in coaching, you've got to be able to pack your bag. You almost have a bag packed all the time, because you just don't know when that phone rings. It's, again, about relationships. A coach knows a coach that needs an assistant. They make a phone call. All of a sudden you're on a flight and you're going to Iowa. All of a sudden you're in North Dakota. Like, if you look at some of the bios of these coaches, it's phenomenal to think about, oh my gosh, like, could you do that?
Right.
Some of these, like, well, let's go back to Coach Wojcik. He's been, and I'm this could be, you know, incorrect. Yeah. But I want to say he's been to over 12 or 15 schools in his career. And that's, you know, that's not all in the same state, obviously. So you're picking up and moving quite frequently. And so that takes a toll. It could take a toll on your kids and your wife, right?
Yeah, for sure. And so you didn't get any of those opportunities. And you actually, ironically, got an opportunity meeting somebody that was high up in Dick's Sporting Goods on a plane that you were going to recruit for basketball, if I'm not mistaken. So talk about that process, and then jumping out of coaching because your options were small or exhausted, and you didn't have a coaching job that was going to be beneficial for you and the family. And then what'd you have to do?
Yeah. So after having the conversation with Allie, we just said, wait, well, I gotta make a choice here. Right. And so, to your point, I'm in the Las Vegas airport in my gear, San Jose State gear. I'm coming back from UNLV. We're at a recruiting tournament there. And so I meet an individual that's, you know, happens to be the regional vice president at Dick's Sporting Goods. And I didn't know that at the time. This gentleman walks over to me at the gate and sits down next to me. I've got my laptop up. I can remember my scout was San Diego State. And so I'm in there, I'm just locked in, right? I've got the next scout, I'm on a flight, boom, recruit, get back. We're always preparing for the next game. And so here I am, and he sits right next to me and says, "Hey, what's your affiliation with San Jose State?" And I start telling my story a little bit. And he says, "Well, my son's a pitcher at Nevada Reno." So he had experienced the recruiting process, right, with his son, and he's playing in the Mountain West, obviously a different sport, but
Sure.
He knows that level. So he sits next to me. We're on Southwest flight, and he sits next to me on the flight, and we end up talking for the entire duration of the flight. And he's asking questions about adversity and building culture, and what kind of character you go after in terms of recruiting, and very, very smart and well-rounded, thought-out questions, right? And all he did was want to hear the responses, right? And we're about 15 minutes from landing here. And so I said, "Hey, I've really enjoyed this conversation, but I have no idea who you are, what your name is, and what do you do? Because gosh, you're asking some thoughtful questions here around some really interesting topics." And he said, "Well, this is who I am, and this is what I do. And God, I think that coaching is at the mecca of leadership."
Yeah, it is.
And if we ever had an opportunity as a company to get a coach, to lead a building, to lead one of these teams, we would absolutely take advantage of that. So as I know that level and how competitive it can be, if you ever find yourself outside of coaching, call me. And, I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm not a retail guy, right? I've been coaching all this time. I'll land on my feet, I'll land on my feet. There's something out there for me.
Yeah.
Well, there wasn't, right? As we talked about, you exhaust your options. But again, connections, relationships. And so I found myself after those 3 months of the interview process and applying, and I said, I have to make this phone call. And he was right there, answered the phone. And I found myself leading groups at Dick's Sporting Goods in multiple cities. So Fremont and Sunnyvale, and what a humbling experience, first of all, for me. You can take a lot of those qualities as a coach and bring it into business, because I believe, I'm a firm believer that people want to be led, and they want direction. And so, that was a time frame. That was 16 months where I was away from the game. And boy, did I miss it every single day. I know you and I have had a lot of conversations during that time. And I live vicariously through you and a few other of the colleagues that we've known in the Bay Area in coaching, but very humbling experience.
For sure. And now you're the head women's basketball coach at Menlo School. So tell me how that, you got hired 3 days before the start of practice.
Right.
So talk about just a wave of like the last 8-9 years of your basketball experience, deep in the game, head coach in the game, no longer out of school because the school has gotten rid of athletics, then back into the game as associate head coach, then out of the game for a year and a half, and then back in the game coaching high school girls varsity, which you had not previously done before, but you obviously coach women's basketball. So it just seems like a lot has happened in an 8-year span. So tell me like where your head is at when you finally actually get this new op at Menlo School.
So Menlo School is a unique opportunity. I've been in the Bay Area my whole life, and I have known about Menlo, but I didn't really know about Menlo, if that makes sense, right? Until you're between those four walls and you're really in the culture and you're in the environment every single day. What an opportunity that I've been blessed with. My family's been blessed with to lead this girls basketball program into the future. And this came about very quickly. And so, I was always looking, right? And so during this last 16 months, you're away from the game. My perspective on the game was, visual, right? As you look and how can I still get better during this time away? Because I never closed the book on coaching, right? But I was a fan now. And I could step away after all this time because I coached for 14 years straight and never had a break. And then if on top of that, as a player, you're talking about another 8, right? So taking a step back, as I hope nobody ever has to do, right, is, I think, very beneficial and monumental in your growth as a coach and how you see the game, how you think the game. So I always had notepads everywhere in the house, nightstand. I'm recording games. I'm playing back, possessions. And so I thought I got better in those 16 months as I continued to work on my craft on the side. But I was always looking. And so when this opportunity came about and I got a phone call from their athletic department, I said, absolutely, I'll come to campus and interview. And so that process, went very fast. And as you said, October 30th was the offer and October 30th was the acceptance. And so we jumped in and we had a lot of work to do, and very successful Division IV program in the past. And so John Pay has led a very successful program there at Menlo. And as I continue the legacy of Menlo girls basketball there, it's just been a lot of fun integrating my family into a new environment. And so lots of opportunity at Menlo School, and we're excited to be there.
Well, we'll get back to that probably later on, but that was like the longest 3-minute backstory we've ever had. But that's the reason why I actually like the in-person. I might just have all in person. So I'm going to try to get any of the local coaches that want to come out here. I need to get them in person because it's just you just feel a lot different. But anyway, I want to go all the way back. Both you and I were brought up by our mothers as single parents. And, the first time that I met you, it was you challenging me and all the other guys to one-on-one after practice. You were on the JV team when we had our really good team, but you got brought up to varsity later. But you would always try to challenge us one-on-one. And we're like, who is this short guy that, thinks he's good at basketball? At the time, your hair was blonde, so we used to call you little Eminem. And I remember you had come out for football too, and you had you were super fast and super quick, but you had like the single bar in the middle. And I was like, who is this dude? And then
I had the lineman face mask. That's what I had.
The single bar in the middle with the lineman face mask. I'm like, how can he even catch? He's supposed to play running back and receiver. But we used to play ones, and then, we graduate and you end up going over there. And, we went on to college and stuff like that, but we always kind of followed you because our high school coach basically kidnapped you and took you over to Piedmont Hills. I'm not sure if we can go into the backstory on how that actually happened, but you ended up in Piedmont Hills. And then after that, we kind of reconnected when we were both in college, and we would work out together every single day. You used to work at Bally's Total Fitness, and you had the keys, so you would either get us in there late at night when nobody was there, early in the morning. We would work out, probably for an hour and a half, and we would always do bench press for sure. So he was benching over 300. I had 2 plates on.
Hey, still to this day, it's just bench press for me.
I was like, well, your arms are shorter, dude. That's the reason.
I haven't seen a squat rack in a while.
And you put and your arms are you put them out so wide. So it was like you only had to go 2 inches. I'm like, my arms are too long. I can't bench like that. But you've always had this mentality of relentless nature to you. Where did that come from? And how have you always been that way?
I'll go back to the, being raised by our moms, right? And there was a mentality that set in to me very early. And I will touch on Coach Quinnett a little bit here because, and I hope he watches this because he has been a giant in my life. And the reason for that is because my mom gave me an opportunity to see what hard work looks like, and the benefits of working hard every single day. It pays off. And so for those that think, that people just wake up and things successfully happen for them is wrong. Yeah. You've got to work. And so, Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, everything that he's become, today, he has a saying that, he's the hardest worker in the room, right? Well, I got to see that firsthand as I grew up, and that was with my mom. And so I adapted that mentality very much so early on. And then, just coming to the realization through Coach Quinnett, what is it going to take for me to get to my goal, my end goal? I think it's important to have short-term goals that you can attain, but you always strive for a bigger dream. And that dream's got to scare you a little bit, because if it doesn't, it's probably not big enough.
Yep.
And, for me, basketball was going to be my avenue. And I knew that right away. I fell in love with the game so early, and Coach Quinnett was in my life at a very early stage, as you mentioned. And so, between watching my mom work and then having somebody as influential as Coach was in my life, feeding me information who played at a high level there and how to attain that, I felt like I had all the ammunition I needed to be successful, and I had accountability. And if it wasn't my mom holding me accountability, as you know, Coach Gwinnett was holding us accountable.
Absolutely.
And so I had that in my corner, and I was very fortunate from a very early age. And so, you know, as I grew up and as I continued on my path in terms of basketball and developing as a young man, I had to be the hardest worker in the room because I knew I wasn't the smartest in the room. And so I just dove all the way in and really studying the game, watching players. I mean, you're going back to an era where, you know, Marbury and Nash and Iverson, like all those guards that really changed kind of the way the game was played. And then getting a chance to be around basketball at a higher level with, you know, Coach Gwinnett bringing me into open gyms at Stanford and, you know, West Valley. Like let's really talk about the past in the Bay Area and what it was like. Basketball hasn't, if you're in this generation of basketball as a player, like you don't realize what the Bay Area looked like 20 years ago in terms of basketball. You wanted to be here.
Right.
The summers were harder than your seasons. I mean, I'm going to name drop some people here, but Coach Bob Burton, Danny Yoshikawa, you know, the leaders of West Valley. I mean, the games that we played in the summer and the spring at West Valley were some of the best runs that you could find. But we were always playing.
Yep.
You know, and so for me, it was.
Yeah, and I'll chime in there, not to cut you off, but to cut you off. We would go to Gwinnett would take us to the parks, and we got tougher because of that.
Yeah.
It was a lot of tough stuff, and I want to double tap on some of the stuff that you were talking about with your mom. And for those that had both of their parents, they may not realize this, but I think both of us have that same mentality because we literally watched this. And, you know, my mom never like cried or complained about the situation. But when you look back on it, man, that was tough. We both have a spouse that is incredible to our family. I couldn't imagine what it would be like for all those years to not actually have that. I can just remember going to the flea markets on Saturday morning, waking up at 4 a.m., packing up the car, going to sell whatever it is that we had, and whatever earnings she got, she would give back to me so I wouldn't feel less than to go get those Jordans that, you know, the kids with two parents that we all grew up with had, or the certain things. She never wanted me to lack for anything. We would go to Marshalls and Ross. She would place together an outfit. That's why I like to dress nice now, is because she made something that wasn't expensive look expensive. I had the kids looking at me like, oh, where'd you get that? Where'd you get that? And I'd be like, oh, Macy's. But I got it from Marshalls and Ross. And it was understanding your circumstance, but not letting your circumstance define who you were.
That's
And I know your mom, like your mom is relentless. She still walks and works out relentlessly to this day. I see her walking on the trail. And I have a lot of admiration for your mom, especially, you know, once my mom passed, you know, a few months back, you start to think about that. But I have so much admiration for what your mom stood for and the person that she raised, because we're not supposed to be in the situations that we're in now. We're not supposed to have the opportunities that we were supposed to have now. And I would basically say that it is mostly because of what they instilled in us. They stopped their life to benefit us, so we can be where we're at. And so super indebted to my mom. I know you're super indebted to your mom too.
Yeah. And, you know, we miss Gina every day. Right. And so, but to that point, you know, I think there was a little fear of our moms too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so, you know, watching them work every single day and having the respect level that we had for them, because of the opportunities they were providing for us, we'd be remiss to say we also didn't fear our moms a little bit, you know.
And we didn't want to let them down.
Right.
Because I think unconsciously we knew exactly, not then, we for sure know now what they were kind of going through. I couldn't even imagine those days, those nights. I mean, it must have just been so difficult. So, and then like later on, you know, I want to give my mom grace because she was tired. She was tired of, you know, always having to do all this stuff. So when she wasn't like that towards her, you know, later age in life, in their 60s. Like sometimes I resented that, to be honest with you. I'm like, Mom, Mom must come on now. Yeah. And now you look back and be like, damn, she was just tired. All she needed was a little bit.
Well, they're
more
superhuman
grace.
to us.
Yeah.
And that they're superheroes.
Yep.
And so as we get older, we don't think they are getting older.
Yep.
And so we always look at them as mom, and we remember them as when we were young. And so to your point, like it's hard to see parents get older, right? Yep. And the toll that it takes on them. But gosh, she never made an excuse. And so who was I, to say I can't do this, or this is too difficult for me. Right. And as fathers now, you and I, you look at our children and say, there is no excuses. Right. Right. If we were able to do it and our moms were able to do it for us, you should be able to do it too.
Right. And that's why I think that the two things that we really like is, working hard, but also working out. So having our kids be able to see that, staying active, I think. Automatic, because if working out is hard. It's difficult and hard to do. And a lot of people are going to make excuses to not be able to do that. But I love the fact that my kids can watch me. They can watch my wife. And like it's embedding something in them. And they're like, oh, you work out today? Like, yeah, every day. That's how we do it. Yeah. Because there was never a day off for our mothers. We don't take a day off. Like whatever it is that we got to do, we have to attack it with the utmost mentality. It's got to be a high level, everything. Or if you're not going to be high level, at least your effort was going to be high level, because we're all going to be gifted and talented in different things. And like for you, you got the most out of your body at your size. What you were able to do on the court was incredible. And I played you one-on-one. I can't even tell you how many games we played one-on-one or shooting competition, but you were one of the hardest. I'd rather guard somebody 6'7" than guard you, because especially I was telling Ryan Legod this, we saw them the other night, but I'm like, I'd rather guard somebody taller, because if we were playing ones and twos, I could probably get a lot of layups on you. But if you made 3 threes and all you needed was one more bucket, the game was over, because we're going ones and twos to 7. So I was like, I look back, I'm like, damn, he was finessing, he was finessing his advantage, which was at that time shooting the basketball. Yeah. And so if you made a couple, then I had to guard you, and then you can go get a layup, or mid-range. You were deadly at the mid-range. But I think you got a lot of that mentality from Quinette too, which I got to give him his props. There's a lot of things that I didn't agree with, and we actually talked. We text you. He, Ostrowski, Skip, we all sat down at a restaurant, and we had one of the best conversations.
Oh, I'm sorry I missed out. I heard about that.
It was phenomenal. Ostrowski was on here probably 15 episodes ago. We talked about that, but there's just a lot that I'm grateful for. He taught us a mentality, and he got us to play to our maximum capabilities. So talk a little bit about that relationship that you had with him, and then some of the things that you learned from him, and then some of the things that you would like to do differently as a coach now that you look back on it. Even when we were first coaching, when I was your JV coach at Del Mar, I remember that one day I just blew up this kid.
I remember this.
And Giles told me the God's honest truth. I've told the story on the podcast before, but I blew this kid up. He didn't deserve it. I saw him at Jamba Juice, not a few years back now. It was probably a while, maybe like 10 years ago now. But he made eye contact with me. I made eye contact with him. He was with this other boy, the point guard, and we had a moment, but I knew and he knew that wasn't right for me at that point in time. So ever since then, I've always thought about that moment. I never want to make, and that was back in 2008. That was in 2008. So, it's a long time ago from now, but I always think about that, and I'll never forget that moment. But those are the things I'm like, I don't ever want a kid to feel that way because of something that I said.
Yeah. Well, as I've mentioned before, but Coach Quinette had literally came into my life at the perfect time, changed my life. It's a very close family friend of mine now, still to this day. I'll even go into, Eric Ostrowski and Skip Yenchek. I mean, the three of those guys, let's just talk about like men in your life, right? All coaches, all leaders, completely changed the direction of and the course of my life, and all in different phases of my life, right? Brad coached me at Piedmont Hills, and Skip obviously coached me for a year at Piedmont as well, but our relationships remain. And Eric gave me an opportunity to coach at Del Mar as he was backing away from that and going more into an athletic director role. But the three of those men really changed the outset of my life. When you talk about Brad, I think one of the things you have to understand right away is the loyalty that comes with him, right? He is as loyal as they come. And so if you don't understand that about him, you won't ever understand him. But the impact that he makes on people, if you allow him in, is phenomenal. And so let me just go into some of the things that he's done as a coach and as a mentor. There was never a Saturday morning that he wasn't present for me outside of practice. Hey, you want to shoot Coop? Let's go shoot. Right? Because this is what it's going to take to be successful at the next level. Right? And mind you, this was before shooting guns, right? Like everybody has a gun now, shoot away. Like you've got all this technology. We didn't have that. Like it was just kind of coming into play. But it wasn't where it is now.
Right.
Everybody's got a trainer. Everybody's got a strength coach. Everybody's got, there's a lot of things that we didn't have in that era. Right. And you were even before me.
Yep.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about. But there's nothing like one ball, one rebounder, and you're just grinding. You're not looking at the clock. It's about shot makes.
Yeah. And if you can't make shots, it sucks to rebound for you because you're going to get that thing. At least if you're making shots, you're right under the rim. I can snap you the ball right next to it. But it really sucks if you have a bad shooter and you have to rebound.
Yeah.
With one ball.
Well, there was a toughness about him that it was unapologetic, yeah. Right? And so he was that way as an individual, his personality, and he broadcasted that on everybody that was in his inner circle, and very much so about the kids that he coached. And so, let me just take myself out of this. Let's talk about the impact he made on a team in the locker room. Like we're living in an age now where we've got, V reps, and you've got, quick, all these, the fast draw, and you've got all these platforms where you can draw these sets, and coaches got so many great actions and things like that. If you're really breaking down basketball and you watch a game, there's a lot of great stuff out there. Coaches run really good stuff. We had 0 plays. Like you and I went to a coaches clinic at USF long time ago, and we got to hear the late, great Shark, Coach Tarkanian speak. And he talked about his 90, I want to say it was 92 team. Maybe it was 91. That went 32-0 and won the national championship, beat Duke. He 91. Said he didn't have one play and he didn't watch film one time that whole season. You think about, the Larry Johnsons, Stacey Ogmans of the world, and Greg, but it's like, wow, that stopped everybody in the building at that point when he said that. And I thought right away about my time at Piedmont Hills. We didn't have one set. Brad taught us how to play basketball. And so, what does that look like? It's player movement, it's ball movement, it's how to screen, it's how to attack a gap, it's how to read a defense. And so we really learned basketball. And that's why we weren't 6'7", 6'8". We weren't rolling into gyms, passing the eye test. I mean, we were beating teams because we knew how to play basketball.
Well, and there was a toughness factor. I mean, our Del Mar teams were so tough. Your teams were probably even tougher than ours, because we got him when he was in his first year, first 2 years. And then you got him after coaching us, which was probably difficult too.
Yeah.
Because I told him, I was like, we were probably, a-holes too, so you probably had to do that for us to actually respect you, because we probably would have ran over you with the personalities that we had in the room. Now we worked hard. we all worked extremely hard. Like we were a team that you would probably love to coach because we didn't make any excuses. We had a bunch of guys that played multiple sports. You know, me and Jason played football, basketball, and baseball. And then everybody else played football and basketball.
Yep.
Everybody except for Ryan and Steve, who had transferred from Midi. But we all played multiple sports, and we weren't shy with contact. We weren't shy to take a charge. We weren't shy to press, and we didn't care who started or who came off the bench. Like I was starting my first couple years. I came off the bench my junior and senior year after he came, especially when Ryan came in, and Ryan was a better shooter at the time. Now, Ryan, I got you now. I got you now. I got you now. And you still never beat me one-on-one. This guy has. He's beat me multiple times. But Ryan, you didn't beat me one-on-one ever. But you did start over me our senior year. So
well, you know, and so Brad too, the other point to that is I look at your teams at Del Mar, right? His first couple of years had some size there with Steve White and he was and even Steve Belton. You guys had some fantastic pieces there with your teams, and he utilized that to perfection, you know. But then he comes to Piedmont Hills, and we were kind of played positionless basketball there. And you know, you think about like blocker mover.
Now, you guys were better than us, though.
I don't know. I don't know about that. Now I will say this:
you guys were better.
We're talking about the Warriors of the past versus the Warriors now. Like, I would love to see, you know, Aaron Buckner, Andre Hayes, Ryan Cooper, like that team go in and play, you know, the McSwains, the Steve Whites, the Ryan Lagads, the Jason Campbells. That would be a pretty fun game to watch. But, you know, if you didn't defend, you weren't going to play, you know.
100%.
So let's not mistake the fact that as creative as he was offensively, and really in terms of the creativity, was keeping it basic. Like basketball is a simple game. He kept it very simple. But as I was talking about the blocker mover, we kind of adapted that mentality offensively. And he utilized my skill set, as you spoke to earlier. You know, I got the most out of my frame, right? Well, if it wasn't for Coach, you know, I would have never known what that looks like as a player, because he exposed me and put me in a situation to be successful where it's hard to find these days players that can really read screens, come off screens. No, footwork is monumental in terms of, you know, the next phase of basketball. Like, how do you catch it off a flare? You know, are you prepared to catch and shoot? He was having me run off of floppy action before floppy was really, you know, a thing. And so that blocker movement that we were talking about, you know, that the comfortability catching in different spots on the floor and getting shots off for me, that's where he really changed.
And that's investment too. That was before, like you said, trainers, and he wasn't charging you. No. That was just his time. So the amount of time, like you said, every Saturday he would make himself available just for you. Like I don't know too many people that would actually do that. Does it benefit him? Yeah, in the short term, as far as his team gets better, if you get better, yes. But at the end of the day, it doesn't actually benefit him at all, like him personally.
But that's who he was.
To get you better. Yeah.
Right.
I
like
know.
that speaks
admirable.
volumes.
Yeah.
To who he was, you know, and his sons now,
they're excellent.
I mean, unbelievable. Right. Like, so, you know, I know firsthand what he's doing with them, right. And their careers and behind the scenes and getting them prepared, because his exposure to the game as a player is you can't match that, right? And so he was able to bring that to us at Piedmont Hills.
And that's one of the things that I really picked their brain about. I was like, you know, because his son Bryce is going to be a Division I basketball player, and his youngest son might be better, but he's really good at football too. And Ostrowski has two boys that are playing college baseball,
right?
And Skip has a daughter that is really high level in swimming. And so I'm like asking them how much is too much, and he talked about, because he said a lot of the times he was too much with us or too much pushing. But if you don't push enough, you're never going to get to where you want to get to. There's just like, I don't think there's really a balance, honestly. When you want to get to a level, you have to now. Yeah, I don't know. So even after I've talked to them, I've still pondered, like, how hard do I push my personal son? I want him to just want it himself, but it's like our teams too. How hard can we push them before they actually resent us?
Right.
You know, when we're coaching kids, most of these players well, most of them aren't going to be playing in college. Some of them will. So you want to make sure that you're pushing them enough, but it's just like a hard teeter-totter. And I'm still trying to understand that, because early on in my career, I just push. Now I'm a little bit more lax when it comes to that, because I'm more concerned about the relationships and the experience that they have. I want them to look back on the experience at our program and say, wow, I'm so happy that I went through that. Even though some of the days were difficult, even though I thought McSwain was an a-hole, for this time, I want them to look back on how we look back on our moms and be like, damn, I didn't realize what she was doing at that point. But now I look back and I'm like, man, I'm so grateful for you actually doing that for me. And I didn't know it at that point. So I'm still, as a coach, trying to figure that out. And I know that was something that he looks back on and is still looking back on, raising his kids, like how much is too much, how much do I need to fall back, or how much do I need to put it on the gas?
Well, I like to think that I was the guinea pig, right? And so I think the time that Coach Quinnett and I spent together, really maybe gave him an avenue to prepare for his own kids, right? And so, but I think this, like, as a player, you're evolving to the game, right? Like, the game has completely changed from when you and I played to where it is now, right? Officiating's changed, right? So in terms of just how the game and the flow and what it's different, right? You have to adapt. I think that's the key word.
Yep.
Now, as coaches, you've got to do the same. Like, you can't take the mentality and the approach as a coach that you did decades ago and try to apply it in this generation and think that you're going to be successful. I just don't think that's the case.
By the way, when you sent me over your scout game, I've never seen that Coop on the sideline. Like, it was a closer game at the end, and you guys had turned it over. You did your little shuffle cut to get it to your player there, and you guys turned it over, and you just I saw a little twitch, but nothing. No, there wasn't a blow up or anything like that. I was like, wow, that's a lot of growth. But to your point, you've evolved to the person that you are now, to the person that you need to be now for the team that you have currently, not the teams that you had before.
Well, whether it's your own player or it's your own son or daughter, and you're coaching them or you're leading them, the platform, I always say I'm unapologetic in terms of preparation, right? Amaya, my 5.5-year-old oldest daughter, she had a very successful first season in soccer. She found herself being one of the taller, more mature kind of bodies out there, so to speak, right? But she adapted to the game very well. We never practiced. She just stepped foot into that environment and took great angles, and she found herself being very successful in terms of pace and speed and, left foot, right foot, dribbled well, shot it well. But at the end of the day, the things we talked about on the drives home, or in preparation for the next game or the next practice as a team was, confidence, the mental side of things, right? And I don't think it can ever start too young. And so where I think things have changed significantly, especially coaching girls or women, is we're responsible as coaches to make sure that we are right mentally for our group, right? And that approach in terms of, okay, how do we make sure that our confidence is high as a group and individually? And that was my biggest thing in terms of being a parent on the sideline for this season in soccer. And then to your point about our first game at Los Altos, it was more about, we had only spent 3 weeks together. And so we had to go on the road against a team that was pretty successful the last 3 years. They found themselves in 2 CCS championship games with returners, right? And how are we going to win this game, right? My approach was, we're just going to make sure we're going to be unapologetic in our preparation and our standards, but we're going to make sure that the confidence remains high. And so in what comes out of my mouth matters, the way that we uplift matters. And so verbally, we're going to be very positive. And so that's kind of some of the things that I've learned. And we talked about adapting to the game, right? And that's where we're at these days is, your approach to basketball and coaching and leadership, it can't look like what it looked like 20 years ago. It just can't. You're not going to be successful. You're not going to get through to that athlete. You're not. You're not going to get through to that team. And you're not going to build a culture that's going to be sustainable. I know that. And so I've had to change. And I'll tell you what, those 16 months away really prepared me for how I was going to step back in and lead in terms of the confidence level on that platform.
Yeah. And I think the confidence is important, but if you prepare, you're going to be a lot more confident when you get the opportunity. And that's all you want. And if you prepare yourself and you hold yourself to a high standard, well, then hopefully your performance will be high. It doesn't guarantee that it's going to happen for you, but it guarantees that, hey, like we prepared ourselves for the game. And if the other team is just better, they're just better. Or the other team is just bigger, they're just bigger.
Right.
But I think that's a very profound point. And, during this process, I've tried to, especially, things got hard when I've turned 40. This is like the hardest year of my life, but I have tried to have the best attitude. And so I try to show them what strength looks like, what confidence looks like, sharing my stories about what's going on personally so they can understand that, like, look, this is going to be difficult, but I didn't miss anything. I didn't miss work. I didn't miss anything. I needed them to see that they are just as important as anything that is going on in my life. And I'm going to approach everything with positivity, because why not? Okay. And I got this from my grandma because I was like having a bad day or whatever. And my grandma, I called her and I wanted some sympathy because this is her daughter that had passed. And so I'm like, Grandma, so, have you had any hard days? She's like, what are you talking about, Chris? Like, what are you trying to get at? Are you okay? I was like, was there any hard times in your life? And she was like, Chris, every day was hard. I chose not to look at it that way.
Right.
I chose to be grateful. Your mom is not coming back, and you need to be grateful for the 40 years that you actually got to spend with her, because a lot of people don't actually get that. You have one piece of the puzzle that is missing, but you have so many other pieces that are still there. You got a fantastic family, wife, a great job, great friends, a nice home. You have all these luxuries. I didn't even have any of these luxuries when she was growing up. And I got so much inspiration from that. But just when I approach the gym now, it's always like positive, no matter what the situation is. Oh, we got players. Okay, I'm going to step into this drill. Or Coach Eshoff, or Ashley, you step into it. And I think that's the biggest thing. The mindset shift is just, I thought I was a pretty, upbeat and positive person before, but when you were talking about that, I thought of Pete Carroll. He is one of the longest tenured coaches ever. And he had some really difficult times, but his attitude, and now he's won a Super Bowl, so that gives him some leeway, but he should have had two. And it was because of him, he made that mistake, and he hasn't really lived that down, but he still got a job. All those other guys are gone.
Right.
Every single one of them. And that is his attitude. And he's got this philosophy. I loved his book called Win Forever. And, it was just attacking every single day with the mindset of being grateful, winning. And that it doesn't mean actually win the game. It just means winning in life. And I think that's much more important. And I think that's a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. There's a score of the game, and there's a score of the game of life. Regardless of the championships that we've won, or the games that we've won, or the championships you're about to win this year, it doesn't really matter. But the way you approach it every single day with humbleness, with an attitude to be grateful for the things that you have and not worry about the things that you don't. You can't, if you were 6'6", you'd probably be an NBA player. That's just a fact. You can't control that.
Yeah.
But you got the most out of what God gave you, and that was the most important thing. And now you can be the most for your team at home, in your current basketball team, and the people that you lead on a day-to-day basis. And that's why I love this game of basketball, because it has brought us that. It's given us that perspective. Yeah,
I just listening to you speak, the first thing I think about is just showing up. Your year has been as difficult as anybody's that I've known or spoken to or could imagine, right? But there's a quality about you, and I'll even go further and say, for players or coaches, like business leaders or anybody in life, like showing up is really hard. When you hit adversity, and we can just tie this back into coaching, right? Like when you've lost 3 in a row, you question everything. Should I scrap it all? Should I start over? Like, how many coaches out there are going to listen to this and say, I've been there. none of my zone stuff works. I'm start over, well, you're in mid-January. You can't do that, right? Like, trust the process, show up every day. That's the hardest thing to do. It is by far the most difficult thing to do. One of the coaches I worked for said something in a locker room, and I'll never forget it. We were on the road playing at Idaho, and coach said, "Hey guys, we had just beat Washington State, and we were on the swing, right? And so
that was a big money game.
Yeah, that was a big one. Yeah. So we're playing Washington State. We beat them. We go and play beat Idaho, and we're walking out of there. But before, coach gathers everybody, says, "Hey, never underestimate how messed up or screwed up or the adversity that the other team might be going through." And I think about that all the time, right? Now, there was another word used for that in that statement, but I won't say that. But it makes you think, like, all the problems that we're facing, whether personally, individually, family, right? Health, team related, coaching, whether you have doubts or not, like, never underestimate what other people are going through, because it's never as bad as you think it is, and when I took that perspective into coaching and the role that I'm in now at Menlo, it just helps bring some clarity to, did we get better today? I know we did. But you can't underestimate what other people are going through, and so, I even tie it back to Coach Quinnett. One of the biggest things that I learned from him was you fear nobody, and you talk about, my frame and what I was able to do and all that kind of stuff. Well, I had to quickly adapt a personality and a mentality of, there's this chip on my shoulder, and I wasn't satisfied with any type of success that I ever had. And I think as a coach, the biggest, I would say the biggest mentality that you can adapt that your kids will identify with is it's never enough, right? It's on to the next. Like, understand how to celebrate, but also understand how to, move on, right? Because it's about the next game. It's about the next practice. It's about the next opportunity. And so, but Brad, like, the thing that, that I'll never forget is, we never celebrated much. It was always about, well, this is the expectation. Right. And so,
so when you look back on that, should you celebrate those victories when they come?
Yeah. And I think, it's part of that confidence level and making sure that you're putting players and coaches on that platform in your programs is you take a moment. And I said this at Los Altos during a holiday break, right? Played on the 21st. And it's really hard to win, like anything. Like, I don't care if it's sixth grade soccer, if it's, the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club, like, we're talking Division I basketball, we're talking Los Altos versus Menlo. We won a game on the road. There was a lot that went into that, right? It's hard to win, and you hear that a lot in the NFL or the NBA. It is hard to win. And you've got to take a moment and celebrate that, right? You got to learn how to win. And I think learning how to win is how to move on a lot of times, and how to understand what the next day looks like, based on when you play next and who's next. But, a lot of that is just, take a second, right? And enjoy it.
Yeah, it is. And basically half of your games are going to be 6 shots or less. I went into a deep dive because I couldn't control a whole lot this year particularly, so I wanted to see what I could control, and so I go down the list, and there's 105 games that we had that were 12 points or 11 points or less. So if it's 12 or over, it goes out of that column. But in this is my 11th year, we had 105 games. And we were 55 and 50 in the 6 possession games. And all the other games we were like 98, like 12 plus. We were like 98 and 40. So we were going to win those games, or those other games we were just going to lose. That's just how it comes down to. But even your game that I watched was a 4 possession or 3 possession game. You're talking threes. Could have gone the other way.
Right.
And that's how life is. And your point, and the reason why I bring that up is because that's what this is. It is hard to win. because it could have gone the other way because it was only an 8-point game. It's not like you had your chances to blow the doors off, but they also had the chances to get back into it. And that's what everyday life is like too. You're one you're one car light away from being in a fatal accident, or you're 1 second away from not being in that. And that's the perspective you have to look at all the time. And I think that what you just said is very important. And like when you were talking about how hard my year was, I actually got a lot of inspiration from your family. And I want you to talk about the basketball family that you guys do have, because it's pretty unique. Your wife is a referee at the collegiate high school level. I'm not sure if she can ref your games this year.
I would love to have her there.
Her twin sister is a head varsity coach at Los Gatos.
Yeah.
Your brother-in-law is somebody that you actually grew up with, playing basketball with, have coached with at multiple schools, Del Mar, Oak Grove, Valley Christian, Top Flight. Your brother-in-law is a 17-year professional basketball player. We actually grew up like not idolizing him, but knowing who he was because he was a big name in the area, Jeb. And Papa Joe, who you guys lost a few years ago, was their father, who was a basketball coach, has coached in multiple different places. He went to Midi, but he coached in St. Francis and Bellarmine and Los Gatos, I believe, too. And not to mention that your wife had, and this wasn't your wife at the time, so she actually, one of the coldest things I've ever heard in my life. She gave you an out. She was diagnosed with either stage 3 or stage 4 brain cancer. I'll let you tell the whole story. But she says, I might not be able to have kids, and if you wanna dip out, you have every right to do that. And you said no.
Yeah.
Talk about that dynamic first, while encompassing the whole family of basketball.
Yeah. So Allie and I have been married for over 5 years. We've known each other for a long time. And, she is without a doubt the most inspirational and strongest human being I've ever met. I mean, the things that she's gone through in life, you can either blame or you can accept and move on, right? And what she's taught me is, we talked about our moms and how they've really instilled a lot of life lessons in us. But when you have a spouse or somebody that you care about deeply, battle through things that just, frankly aren't fair, right? And cancer to anybody is not fair, right? And so, at the time when she was diagnosed with brain cancer, we were not engaged and we were not married, obviously. So it was a vulnerable, time frame for us in a relationship where we really didn't know where it was going. And I remember getting the phone call, and the trajectory of our life where it is now really played to this phone call, and you go back and I could tell you where I was. I was at the gym. I was working out, and she calls me, and at the time she was living in Sacramento, and she said, hey, I went in and she was dealing with headaches, severe headaches. And so I said, you got to go back. Like, they were kind of doing everything but the scan, right? It was, well, is it dehydration? Is it this? Is it that? I said, if I'm you, Allie, you got to just put your foot down and say, I got to know, I got to know, this is bothering me. This is something I can't live with, any further. So what can you do for me? I'm not leaving here until I get a scan. And so she did that. And obviously, the doctor calls her back and says, hey, we need you to come back to see us. And so I received a phone call from her and says, hey, that can't be good. And I said to myself, I think it's okay. Just go back, check in with the doctor. Meanwhile, it's probably not the news that we wanted. And so, in that very moment, once we realized what the severity of it was and what it was going to entail, she gave me an out, and somebody that's been dating.
And you just said it, you show up.
You show up, right?
And as you continue, and I just don't want to forget this point, all of you guys showed up when it was difficult, or if it's difficult for you guys, we show up. We and your team, it could be your immediate family. It could be your team that you're coaching, or it could be your team of friends. You guys all showed up when Angelo passed away. You guys were there at that CCS game. I had no business being on the sidelines, I felt like, but I felt so much love in that moment because all of you guys were there. People that I've known for 20 years or people that I've known for 11 years, like Taft, people like they all showed up for those moments. But you keep showing up.
You keep showing up, right? And so if she was going to go through this, who was I to walk away, right? And so as I watched her, deal with this news, that's completely life altering. It was an opportunity for me to take a step back, first of all, and reevaluate, the situation, and for her to approach me and say, listen, I don't know what the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, like, I don't know what that's going to look like, but you don't deserve this. You didn't ask for this. I said, me, you didn't ask for this, let's not talk about me right now. This is about you. So it was one of those things where, I said, no, I'm in this, I'm 2 feet in, and, we've been through a whole heck of a lot. It's been a long time since that day, that phone call from her doctors. And so we're proud to sit here today and say, gosh, 3 daughters later, when that wasn't really something that anybody gave us an opportunity to have.
Did that worry you, her not having the, because I believe she had to freeze eggs, and you may not know this either, but Maddie, before we got married, kind of let me know that it was going to be hard for her to have children because she has a translocation on her 14th chromosome. That basically means if the chromosome is like this, it's like broken in half. And so I would have to have the same translocation during that process for it to bind and then create. And so our mom had a lot of miscarriages because of that, but she gave me the same amount. I'm like, I'm in. Like, this is right. Okay. If we have to adopt, like, I don't care what we have to do. Right. But obviously we have 2 children now, so it ended up working out. But you just put it in God's hands and let your faith lead you, rather than something that somebody's telling you this is not going to be a reality. You're not going to have children unless this is going to happen. So did that scare you at that time? Because it didn't scare me because I had faith.
Yeah, it did. I think being an only child, I always wanted to have multiple children, right? And so it crossed my mind, but at the time, that was too far in advance for me to think, what can we do now, right? And how can I support this process now? I thought about it, but it wasn't ever that. That wasn't the determining factor of, was I going to stay? Was I going to leave? I was all in on this thing because I knew I loved her. I knew it was the person I wanted to spend my life with. And so we were going to figure this thing out, right? And how can I just best support the process through the whole deal? And so, again, if you screenshot, and like, let's take this back to coaching, right? And let's take this back to being a player, right? If you screenshot where you are now, and you look back at where you were maybe a year ago, maybe it was 3 years ago, would you have thought you would be where you are now?
No.
Right. And so trust that process. We're not going to be able to write the script as to what the future looks like. Some people can, maybe, right? Situational, you never know. But like, basketball is a game where you just have to treat it the right way. It demands a certain element of you in terms of dedication and preparation, and you do that. And you respect the process. As a coach, you prepare your teams the right way, right? But you never know where you're going to be, 6 months, 9 months, a year from now. So if I were to go back and say, this is exactly where I thought we'd be, I'd be lying to you. And so I just trusted the process. I trusted God, like he said, and we just went through it.
Wow. Beautiful story. So she's now 5 years cancer free. So that's a beautiful thing. And then while you talk about the dynamics of your family, it's a weird, not weird, just unique thing with regards to how basketball has really shaped you. By the way, me and my wife went to Del Mar. We didn't go there at the same time. You and your wife, same thing. Same thing with Giles and his wife. So we all went to the same school as our spouses, which is pretty unique.
Yeah.
But we were never there at the same time.
Yeah. I do have a very fortunate opportunity to be part of a family that's number one, super supportive of each other and having that basketball kind of culture and background. I've beat a lot of people one-on-one. I have not played Jeb Ivey one-on-one, and
that'd be a tough one.
I don't know if I could get him.
Well, because
I don't know if I could get you, Jeb.
Well,
I don't know.
The thing is,
maybe
with,
10 years ago.
With him,
maybe.
he can shoot it as well as you, and he can score it just as good as you, but he's just 6'2".
that matters.
It does matter.
In one-on-one, that matters.
Because I can't score it as good as him. I can't shoot it as good as him. Although, like block shooting, I was telling Eshoff, because Eshoff was asking me, he was like, "Who's a better shooter, you or Coop?" I said, "In game, 100% Coop, 100%, because he's making really difficult, tough shots, and he can finish too around the rim, which most people, like you had a CCS record. I think did Noah beat that record?
I'm not sure if
did Noah beat it?
I'm not sure if it stands still.
I feel like Noah said he beat it.
It's been a while.
Ironically, I used to coach Noah too.
Yeah.
So, or maybe Roy beat it, but they all played top flight too. So, but I just think that Jeb might have the edge just because he's, taller and, got a little bit more length.
Well, let's make no mistake about it. Jeb's a better player than I was. So, and will ever be. So no,
but he's older than you too. Like he's older than me.
Right.
You're not 40 yet. So.
But the family dynamic is a lot of fun. And, I think sometimes you think about like, how could I script out like the ideal situation for myself? Like, God, I would love to be around this and that. And like, this is it for me. I'm living it out. And it's really cool because, the fly on the wall kind of conversations that him and I have, as Ali explained this to me one time, she's like, gosh, I bet a lot of coaches would love to just sit there and listen to you guys talk. And I never thought of it that way. Right. But it's true, the FaceTimes when, he's living in Beaverton, Oregon, but, we check in weekly and it's such genuine conversation, starts with family. And then it quickly turns to, our teams and how we're doing and just how we're impacting our players and what, kind of the cycle of basketball we're in right now. But, from officiating to head coaches to playing, like we've had so much experience with the game of basketball. And I think it does bring us together as a family. And we support Allie and her passion. And she's really become just an extraordinary official. And I think that's one of the hardest positions to do in the society that we're in, as we see, the NBA and college athletics and even high school, right?
What'd she say after she did our sportsmanship game?
She's always very complimentary about your approach with officials. I will say that. But
what was she for real? Was she for real?
Yeah, no, I mean, she's had worse. Let's just say that.
Man, I felt bad because there was a new official.
Yeah.
And she had texted us before the game. She's like, "Hey, we got a new official. We're short on officials, so just be cool." And then you get into the game, and it wasn't like it was like 7 years ago,
right?
But it's like you couldn't help yourself. You just could not help yourself. It's almost like that's why I don't like Maddie to bring any desserts or sweets in the house because I won't have them unless they're around. If she got chocolate chip cookies in there now, and I'm like, oh man, I want one of these, but like I don't want to eat the whole box.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how it is when you get into it. I don't know. It's yeah. But you're very calm in your game though.
Well, I think this too, like me coaching 5 years ago is very different than I am now, right? And you spoke to it a little bit about the game I just coached, but I think of it through the eyes. Now, I'm fortunate enough to have a spouse that sees it from a different lens, right? And so our conversations at the dinner table might look a lot different, but the respect that I have for her craft. And if you don't know, like, officials take the brunt of everything. I mean, and we're in an era too where like players, could you imagine if we spoke to officials the way players do now with the coaches that we had then,
Curtis Russell would have smacked us.
oh my goodness. Like, you know, and so a little bit of this is I'm a little disappointed in terms of, you know, the accountability for players and coaches and how they, you know, approach officials. And listen, I've been on the other side of that, so I'm one to blame as well. But you know, I look at it through her lens, and think about the poise that they have to have, and the demeanor and the approach to players and coaches, right? Because without them, by the way, we can't play the game of basketball. So the respect level is at the highest. But I see it through her as I go watch her games and see her develop as an official and watch new officials develop. I do think there's a disservice that the NBA is displaying to youth basketball, whether that be, you know, grade school level or even in the college ranks, because there's just a false realization of how you can communicate with officials, and it's not gonna fly in terms of like how they're gonna be successful as players
or in life,
or in life.
But it trickles down in every aspect. Like I had Adair, the Reardon football coach, and he talks about how his approach is different than some of the coaches that have been doing it for a long time. But it all trickles down from the NFL and then to college, then to high school. And same thing here. A lot of the behaviors of players and coaches, we got to watch Bobby Knight literally through and rest in peace, Bobby Knight. We've seen him at a coaching clinic as well, but we've seen him throw a chair across. We've seen all these things, you know, just the other night, Chris Paul and Scott Foster getting into it. Regardless of whatever the situation is, we saw these two interact in a way that probably wasn't beneficial for the game. And we've both, you know, acted in ways that probably weren't beneficial. Now, we haven't taken it to the extreme levels, but at the end of the day, it's just a high school basketball game. Why do we get so pent up? And that's one of the things that I want to just find more joy. Why do we do this? Because it's fun. There's nothing better to being on one of those sidelines on a Friday night when you got, you know, a packed gym and you're going against a really good team, and your team has the opportunity to win that game, and you play out each possession and you see what happens at the very end. But yeah, I think you're right. It is a disservice, and if you are in this situation, and when I did the officials talk this year, I think if both people can have an open heart and an open mind, number one, we're in the midst of not a real battle, because whoever wins this game really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of life. But because we put so much preparation into it, that's one of the things I talked to them. Like, we are scouting, we are watching film, we are texting coaches, we are talking to players, we are interacting with parents, we're talking to admin, we're doing all these things. Now, I also said that they also have a process too, because they have to get to the gym an hour early. They may or may not have somebody to greet them. They may or may not have somewhere to change. They may or may not have waters and things like that, amenities to help them out. If they come to a school like ours, obviously there are protocols in place, but if they go to another school that may not have those resources, that may not have that admin, that's stuff that has to go into them. They may be traveling from the East Bay down here. They may have to go from up here to the East Bay or Peninsula. So there's a lot of things, and we all have to understand the other person's perspective. And then if we get into the lines and we don't agree, that's okay. Just treat each other with respect. It doesn't have to be personal. It doesn't have to get to that level. And then after the game, we can shake each other's hand and say, hey, my bad about that call, or hey, I'm sorry for getting on you on that. It was just in the middle of the game. I'll check the film and see if I was right or wrong, and let you know. And then you just walk away with clean hands. And I think that approach would be a lot more beneficial to the game, because if not, we're gonna lose officials. Like officials getting in fights. You see this on social media, or parents, by the way, are way too crazy. I know that from
we're not going to be those parents.
Watching, I'm not. I am for sure not going to be that parent.
No way.
And I say that now, but I know this. Like, we played in the championship game of the CJ's basketball league, and he's 5, but he's playing, you know, a grade up, and he's always going to play a grade up for those of you who are out there. And our parents on our team, the other team too, but they were like, oh, this championship game, like they were so juiced for this championship game. I'm like, this doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. And then I look back and then I think about, I talked to Jules on the podcast, and I said, what is one thing, now that she's been away from the game for a while, but she played Division I, and then she also coached at a high level for a number of years at Ohlone. She was probably there when you were there.
Yep.
And then she went on to Sac City, but she said, what would she do differently? She said she would play everybody in every single game. And I kind of went back and forth about what that is, but she made a good point, and not that she's wrong. She said every level below the WNBA or WNBA or NBA is just developmental. So what are we really trying to do? And she said it doesn't have to be long, but every player should get into the game, whether it's 30 seconds, a minute, or 5 minutes. It doesn't matter. That would be one thing that she changes now. Like, we kind of went back and forth on that a little bit, and I was like, she changed my mind a little bit about that, because when you think about it, it's like, yeah, I mean, the kids are all practicing, but I also think that it should be a meritocracy. The best players should be in the game. So, but yeah, I don't even know where I went with that, but that's when you get in person, you just get talking and rambling.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, no, when I hear you say that, it's one of the things, like, I think also too, you have to think about, your personnel, right? And what's going to help you be successful, because at the end of the day, the level matters, right? I mean, if you're talking about the NCAA and in Division I, you get 13 scholarships. You might have, more priorities in terms of wins and losses than you would be if you're coaching at the middle school level, and it is more developmental, right? And it is a little bit different mentality there. But let me say this: I'm going to go back to the officials part.
Yep.
Nobody wants to do a bad job.
Correct.
Like, I firmly believe that when you have a title or you're responsible for something and you go and you're going to put your best foot forward, like, I don't think anybody's going to go out there and say, I'm going to do a bad job today on purpose.
Sure.
Like, I think it's in people's best interest to go do a great job. And if you look at officials, whether it's high school or at a higher level, like, they're going out there and they want to do well. They want to do well, and they want to call the game the right way, and they want to be fair, and they hold themselves accountable, because I know, because I live with one, there are state level officials, JUCO officials, Division I, Division II, NCAA level officials that watch film, that study the game, that watch themselves.
I would say the vast majority don't do that, what you just said. That's the difference between the one that you live with and a lot of these others. And all the top ones, we're not talking about them, because they're also not talking about us, but they're talking about some of these coaches that don't put the same preparation as that we would put into the game. And we're talking about the officials that can't get to half court and call a foul when they're the trail and the lead is on the baseline.
Right.
That's what we're getting at. So most people are going to do the bare minimum. Most people get, like, a lot of them will get there. See, we're blessed because in our leagues, we get the best officials. When you're in college, they all had to be good.
Right.
Now, you might not have agreed with their calls, but they all had to be good at what they do to get to where they were at. Some of these officials that we may come across aren't like that. And, like, specifically when you go to AAU, first of all, I don't know how we give them 8 games in a day and expect them to be great for them to get up and down the floor. Like, that is really difficult to do. That's hard. That's just hard to do. Yeah.
I'll take a piss.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm going to lose it.